All right, so let's lift the lid up, if you grab that side. So this is our newest addition to the collection, and we're really glad to have it here. This is a willow bark skirt, so I'm sure you've seen some of the pictures, of course, and you know a little bit about the history, but let's take it out of the box and we can look at it a little bit closely. We received this as a donation from Miss Sandra Lanham, and she tried to donate it to the Arizona State Museum, which is a little bit bigger than our museum here, but they didn't have the space for it. So they actually contacted me and they asked, would you like to have this in the collection? And of course we'd love to have this in the collection because this is where it belongs here. So we received the skirt, we received the paperwork, and I was able to talk with Ms. Lanham and understand a little bit from where it came from. So let's get this out. So I'm just going to very carefully slide it because you can see pieces have already come off. It's willow bark. It's not particularly old. It's probably only about 25 to 35 years old, but it's still fragile. So just very carefully hold under the skirt here, and I'll hold under the skirt here. You'll see that actually get under the tissue paper, which I've already placed, and then just slide it out as the flap drops. Then I can move the box out of the way. So what the artist would do, and we actually know who this came from. This is from Inocencia Gonzales. So she actually still comes to every cultural celebration we have. Maybe you actually probably saw her last year, but she still sells Cocopah jewelry, some of the art that she makes, and she was making these skirts for different museums like the Smithsonian. And she donated one of these to an archaeologist who gave it to Miss Lanham to have. And now it's ended up back at our museum, and we get to see Inocencia every year. It's kind of this interesting show of how small the world is in the end. So let's really gently unroll the skirt. You can see all the fibers that come off, because when you make this, Inocencia was talking about how you have to go and find a dead willow tree. You have to strip the bark one piece at a time. You have to soak it, cut all of the strips, and then one strip at a time, you have to tie them here. So why don't you grab under here really gently, and just let's move it to the side a little bit more so we can stretch it out. Okay, you can pull it there. And then you can help me just pull these pieces out a little bit. It's an interesting story she was telling me. I asked her how she came upon this because we got a story from the Arizona State Museum. And they were talking about how she got it from Inocencia. She got it as a gift from one of the archaeologists. But Miss Lanham, she actually used to be a pilot for all these different archaeologists and people who needed to go down into Mexico. And a lot of times they couldn't afford it because they were doing just research, or they were, you know, working on a dissertation or working for the environment. They weren't paid a lot, of course, because they were just doing research. And she would fly them down there for just enough just to pay for the gas. She wouldn't charge them anything else. And in this particular case, she was looking for vaquitas. Have you ever heard of them? No. They're these little porpoises. They're the world's smallest porpoise, and they're about yay big. They look a little bit like pandas, that's what they call them. And they're trying to find these down at the mouth of the Colorado River. And as you know, the Cocopah people still live down in that part of Mexico, the Cucapá. And she actually needed to talk to some of those fishermen, the Cucapah fishermen. And she met them. She was going with the fishermen, the fisherwomen, who she really enjoyed talking to. And they had seen the vaquitas. And along that time, she got to learn a little bit more about the Cucapah culture. She learned a little bit about the bark skirts while she was down there. And once she learned those things, and she was talking to like the environmentalists down there, and she was talking to one of her friends about the Cucapah, they ended up giving her a kind of a gift like this later in her life. So I thought that was really interesting. You go from kind of environmentalist about porpoises and going down along the mouth of the Colorado River and learning all these amazing things to having something like this that means so much to Cocopah culture. So
I'm interested in it because seeing our traditional dress nowadays, we don't have anything like this. And sometimes I see princesses or members of other tribes wearing their own traditional clothing, and sometimes they have more, you know, items like this, like I'm not how to say it. Like they made it by themselves, maybe some buckskin or things like that, compared to as us, and we have ribbons and cloth that we bought from the store. And so I think it's very interesting to see something like this that was handmade, and it kind of makes me wonder about how we have made our outfits, our traditional outfits in the past. And it makes me interested to see other people's, and it makes me think twice about what they're wearing, you know, how they made it and how they have their clothing and we have ours, and see how it's revolutionized over the years.
Mm-hmm.